What are your thoughts on the AL West? What type of moves do you think are going to be made? How good do you think the Rangers are going to be, and the situation over there with Houston with the new skip?
Great question. I think, obviously, the Rangers won the World Series in very impressive fashion, not taking anything away from them. But you look at the standings, you look at the in-season performance of all three of those teams, they were obviously all extremely close. The Rangers did not run away with this in any sense. They got hot and kind of healthy at the right time of the season, and that's great. That's how you win a World Series. But I think the Mariners can very much look at that division and say it's another three-team dogfight going into next year. We are absolutely contenders. We should make moves, especially around the margins where we know we're weak because we nearly won enough games to win the division. Adding 3 or 4 more wins worth of talent to this roster may win the division next year. I do think the Rangers are going to go out and spend because there's sort of the dividend you get from winning the World Series. The flip side is I think the Astros are kind of on the way down, still contenders, very much so, but they have almost no talent coming out of their farm system at this point. The Major League roster is getting a lot more expensive. They have some big players approaching free agency. It's going to be very tough for the Astros to continue to improve, which, again, I think spells opportunity for Seattle. If I'm ownership there, I'm saying I want us to go for it. This is a year where we absolutely have an opportunity to win the division or at least get the top wild card spot, and tell me what we need to do to get there.
I think that it's sometimes kind of dangerous to think, which is kind of what I think a lot of Mariners fans thought last year, Keith, was like, oh, the Astros are going to fall off. Eventually that's going to happen, and then the Mariners will naturally be able to take it. And then you had the Rangers be like, just kidding, we're going to win a World Series. So I want to almost caution against people thinking that the Rangers just kind of got lucky. I mean, it feels like not only could the Rangers still be really good, but don't they have a pretty good farm system?
They do. They have, I would argue, a stronger farm system than Seattle right now. And they have players who are close to the majors. I'm counting Evan Carter. If you watched any of the postseason, you certainly know who Evan Carter is at this point. And they have players further away with a lot of upside, which either bodes well for them over the long term or just gives them more to trade, too, which they did. They made several pretty critical trades during the season last year. At the same point when Seattle was trading players away, not to say those were bad trades, but it does show you the difference in directions between the two clubs. I agree with your point. Texas is the bigger threat. Texas is still at least going to hold serve. They're not likely to be worse next year, at least during the regular season, than they were this past year. And the fact that they have several young players already in the big leagues, in the lineup, young at third base. I mentioned Carter, Leody Taveras, Jonah Heim is on the younger side. They supplemented younger players with a couple of older free agents. So even if those free agents do decline, because we all, unfortunately, I can speak to this, we decline as we get older. But they'll have young players coming up and improving at the same time. That'll allow Texas, I think, to maintain this level of performance going forward. They'd be the team I'd be more concerned about if I was thinking what's my competitive landscape as a Mariner.
We were it was fun watching the Diamondbacks get to the World Series and put up a fight and do what they did, especially when you look at how much their payroll is. What are the chances they don't obviously duplicate what they did last year, but are extremely competitive?
I could see the Diamondbacks being competitive and yet not even coming close to the division again. I've been having a lot of these conversations with scouts the last couple of days as I work on off-season prospect lists, but we all watch the World Series. We all watch the playoffs. And one made a comment to me, and he wasn't criticizing them, but he just said, I can't believe this team got to the World Series, right? You just look at them. They have one, maybe two superstars in the lineup. Carroll and you talk to baseball people, they love Gabriel Moreno. But then you look at the rest of the club and say, it's fine. They're fine. They're a good team. That's a World Series team. That's a team that won, that you look at who they beat to get to the World Series. You certainly don't think on paper they're better than the Dodgers or better than the Phillies. They're exceptionally well coached. Torey Lovullo did a great job. And I will say their analytics group, combined with the folks they had working on essentially advanced scouting their opponents, may have done a better job than any other club in baseball. That really helps in the postseason. That is not necessarily formula to win 90-plus games in the regular season, and they'll spend a little bit more. But I don't see easy ways for them to get better without just waiting for some of the other young players there, the Jordan Lawlers and the Alec Thomases, Brandon Pfaadt, who really broke out in October. Those guys have to get better. That's how Arizona gets back to the playoffs next year.
Hey, is there a position player who I know you have one, two, three, not including obviously Otani in your top 10, but is there a position player that you think it has a chance to be a little better than people think, maybe floating under the radar, that is a free agent?
Um, yes, and I don't want to spend too much time on some of the guys coming over
Right,
from
right.
Japan and Korea, but all of those guys, and I'm often a little bit more skeptical, but I think all of those guys who are coming over actually um, maybe getting a little bit underrated right now. I like Heimer Candelario. I think he has got, because he sort of broke out last year. He was basically let go for nothing by the Cubs, and they had to turn around and trade to get him back. And I think that's pretty real. I wouldn't be giving him a 5-year contract, but I think he's got some upside remaining. I have been a Jorge Soler fan for kind of forever. I think we know what sort of player he is. He's another guy with at least power upside. He'd be a pretty good fit for the Mariners, actually. You'd get a similar kind of production, similar shape of production to Teoscar, but just better from the same spot in the lineup. And I don't know what Jason Hayward's market's going to be like, but he actually really did change his swing. And when I ranked him where I did on my free agents, I had readers basically question my sanity. And I said, no, he's actually a different player now. This is not just because I love Jason Hayward as a high school prospect 16 years ago, which is also true and underscores just how old I am. But no, the swing is different, and you can see it in video, you can see it in the data. At least as a left-handed hitter against right-handed pitching, like, I'd give that guy a couple of years to be the strong side of an outfield platoon, and I don't know if the market's going to see him that way. He was really bad for a long time, and sometimes teams just have a hard time getting away from that because it's cemented in your brain. No, Jason Hayward is not good. Well, he's kind of good. And in this market, kind of good makes you a top 30 free agent in the whole class.